Now we will discuss about factors that influences the food choices. How these factors influences the food choices we make. Self-awareness is very important because when we understand ourselves better, it is easier to set goals and create an action plan according to our own individual needs. Similarly, in order to fully understand why we eat the foods we eat, we need to examine the factors that influence food choices. When we are aware of these influences, we can then begin to plan to make better, healthier choices. At the same time, we are able to better avoid various pitfalls. If we apply on population dietary change, there is a need for a greater understanding of the determinants that affect food choice. This examines the major influences on food choice with a focus on those that are amenable to change and discuss some successful interventions. The key driver for eating is, of course, hunger. But what we choose to eat is not determined by the physiological or nutritional needs. Some of the other factors that influence the food choices include biological determinants, economic determinants, physical determinants, social determinants, psychological determinants, attitude, beliefs, and knowledge. These are all the factors that influence food choice. The complexity of food choice is obvious, which is in itself not exhaustive. Food choice factors also vary according to the life stage, and the power of one factor will vary from one individual or group of people to the next. One type of the intervention to modify food choice behavior will not suit all population groups. Separate type of interventions to modify the food choice behavior will be suitable for all population groups. Because one factor will vary from one individual to another individual. Interventions need to be geared towards different groups of the people with consideration to the many factors influencing their choices. Hunger is one of the most common and obvious factor that influence food choices. When we are hungry, we need to eat food. We may experience otherwise unpleasant symptoms such as irritability, fatigue, headache, growling stomach, and so on. There will be many unpleasant symptoms. The central nervous system is involved in controlling the balance between hunger, appetite, stimulation, and food intake. Appetite is one of the most dominant factors that influence food choices. It can be triggered by a whole host of conditions and situations we encounter virtually every day: stress, boredom, mental health, habit, smell, and social occasions, and so on. The macronutrient, that is carbohydrate, proteins, and fats, generates satiety signals of varying strength. The balance of evidence suggests that fat has the lowest satiating power. Carbohydrates have an intermediate effect, and protein has been found to be the most satiating factor. Protein is the most powerful satiating factor regarding carbohydrates and fats. The energy density of diets has also been shown to exert the potent effects on satiety. Low energy density diets generates greater satiety than high energy density diets. The high energy density of high fat and high sugar foods can also lead to passive overconsumption, where excess energy is ingested unintentionally and without the consumption of additional bulk. Important satiety signal may be the volume of food or portion sizes consumed. Many people are unaware of what constitutes appropriate portion sizes and inadvertently consume excess energy. Next factor that will influences the food choices is palatability. When you hear the word palatability, what you probably think, it usually has to do with the way things taste, and it comes from the word palate, which in turn is rooted in the Latin palatum, or roof of the mouth. Palatability of something is a quality of being tasty or acceptable in some other way. When you are baking a cake, its palatability is much more important than the way it looks. Influence of palatability on appetite and food intake in human have been investigated in various studies. There is an increase in food intake as palatability increases, but the effect of palatability on appetite in the period following consumption is increased. Increasing food variety can also increase the food and energy intake, and in the short term alter energy balance. Sweet and high fat foods have an undeniable sensory appeal. It is not surprising that food is not solely regarded as a source of nourishment, but is often consumed for the player value it imparts. Individuals have a wide range of tastes which influences the food choices, leading some to dislike milk and others to hate raw vegetables. Some foods that are very healthy, such as vegetables and tofu, which may be unappealing at first to many people. Creative cooks can adapt healthy foods to meet most people's taste by increasing their palatability. To call a food palatable means that it is pleasing or agreeable to the palate or taste of an individual. Palatability is not static, it is always changing based on the state of the individual, especially in regards to the time of food consumption. Palatability also is not something that is permanent. People can acquire a taste for certain flavors, and some flavors may actually become less palatable over time. Humans need food and liquids to live because they provide energy and cleanse the system. Their needs, such as homeostatic needs, directly correlate with the palatability because foods and liquid that appease the people's palatability meet their homeostatic needs. All humans find at least some flavors palatable. This is a basic biological trait which is necessary for the survival. Without the ability to find any food palatable, humans would not be able to meet their energy need. One of the main factors influencing the palatability is food deprivation. This deprivation can be a period of only a few hours. When someone has not eaten in some time, palatability will be increased to a greater number of foods. Individuals may even experience increased palatability to flavors that are generally do not even like. This is a natural process which is occurring at daily basis. The palatability of food decreases after food consumption, and especially in the case of when the someone is extremely full. This is a natural biological process which occurs to let humans know when they are able to stop eating. This process is controlled by a feedback mechanism. When your body recognizes that it is full, the brain sends out a message which becomes a negative feedback mechanism, alerting the rest of the nervous system that palatability can now be decreased. Extremely palatable foods, which may based on the preferences of the individuals, can have the negative feedback mechanism, and people may choose to continue eating regardless of their satiety. Sensory aspects is the most powerful determinants that affects the food choices. Individuals want their foods to be healthy, but when it comes down to making a buying decision, it is taste that matters most. We experience the pleasure of eating through our sense of sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. For example, We always appreciate the color of the ripe red apple, which is sight. Sense of sight is involved. We listen to the crunch of a cookie. Sense of hearing is involved. We feel the texture of melting chocolate on our tongue. Sense of touch is involved. We inhale the flavor of fresh strawberries as we chew. Sense of smell is involved. And we taste the sharpness of sour lemons, causing our face to cringe. Tasting is done with our tongue via the taste receptors in our taste buds. The flavors that our tongue normally gets credit for detecting are actually picked up by our olfactory systems located in the nasal cavity. Taste is a major determinant that influences our food behavior. Taste and familiarity influences the behavior towards food. A liking for sweetness and a dislike for bitterness are considered innate human traits present from birth. Taste preferences and food aversions develop through experience and are influenced by our attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. Food access is one of the food security pillars. Food security encompasses physical and economic access to food. Accessibility to shops is another important physical factor influencing the food choices, which is dependent on resources such as transport and geographical location. Healthy food tends to be more expensive when available within towns and cities compared to the supermarkets. Improving access alone does not increase the purchase of the additional fruits and vegetables, which are still regarded as prohibitively expensive. For most individuals, a key factor determining access to food is its affordability. The accessibility dimension that food availability does not guarantee that everyone is free from hunger. Food affordability and economic accessibility are dependent not only on food cost but also on the disposable income that can be spent on the food. Access is also determined by the way society allocate food to its member and food preferences. Access to food is determined by the incomes, food prices, and the ability of the households and individuals to obtain access to social support. Individuals' access to food is also influenced by the social variables, including gender, positioning, and power hierarchies within household. Speaking of access, the availability of food is another important factor that influences the food choice. Depending on where we live, we may not have easy access to a variety of foods. In fact, we may not have access to some at all, ever. The food choices that are made are entirely based on what is currently available. At times, limited availability may make it difficult to eat nutritionally balanced meal. There is no doubt about that. Many remote areas, geographically isolated communities in the country, and many other experience problems with the food availability. In many parts of the world where food is scarce, it is impossible to have any choice at all when it comes to food. This is an incredibly sad fact of our lives, and it certainly requires a staunch and sustained effort on the human race to eradicate. For many of us, it is possible to have some say in what foods are bought and eaten. Without a doubt, how much food cost is an important factor that influences the food choices. How much money we have at our disposals severely restricts what food we can buy. This is especially true when more nutritious food tend to cost more than heavily processed, nutrient drained foods. How much money we make is certainly one of the factors that influences the food choices. And there are the number of reasons that contribute. Generally speaking, with a relatively good income, we have a greater purchasing power. This power can translate to being able to afford a wide variety of food products. Its cause and effect. It takes more than a few rupees in the pocket to decide to buy nutritious food. But there is no question that money makes such food more accessible. It is very important to learn to purchase food that is as nutritious as possible with the money we have. Another factor that influences the food choices that we make is education. Simply put, the more background knowledge we have about the nutritional value of foods, the better the position to make informed choices. This is precisely why our nutritional counseling sessions focus on education as it applies to meal planning. Deep down inside, we want to make good choices. This applies not only to food selection, but also to other aspects of life. If we have all the information before us, we are more likely to make those choices. Knowledge and education is one of the most important factors that can influences our dietary behaviors during every stage of life. Knowledge about the health does not lead to direct actions when individuals are unsure how to apply their knowledge. Information disseminated on nutrition comes from a variety of sources and is viewed as conflicting or is mistrusted, which discourages motivation to change. It is very important to convey the accurate and consistent messages through various medias, on food packages, and of course via health professionals. When you have two households in the same location, that are of different income types. They will purchase more similar products than households with different income types that live in different locations. When you look at two households in the same location that are more and less educated, say you have a college educated and a high school educated household, those different households purchase just as different products as they might if they lived in different locations, which means that education and knowledge about anything can largely influences our eating habits, eating food choices, and dietary patterns. How the quantity and quality of food varies according to the person's social status or position in the social hierarchy. Various disciplines, including social, psychological, nutritional, and public health sciences, have examined these differences. Social class can be examined according to the defining factors: education, income, or occupational status, or subjective components such as perceived rank in the society. Eating behavior is a highly affiliative act. Food one eats is closely tied with one's social class throughout the history. Social class differences in food consumption follow a general pattern. Upper class groups consume the foods that signify exclusively and access to rare goods, while lower class groups on the other hand consumes the foods that are readily available. Nutritional quality of upper class diet is typically better than those of lower class diets. Increased education and income, diet quality improved. Greater income plays an important role in assessing the healthy food. Most health food stores and supermarkets, which carry fresh produce, are more readily available in high income areas compared to low income areas. Defining characteristics of middle class diets are less obvious than those of high and low class groups. Middle class diet. It is a socio-economic position, that is, median income, distance from the uh, poverty level, or is it a psychological state of mind, that is, self perception and culture. Middle class are the biggest consumer of fast foods. Nutritious quality of the middle class diets closely mirror those of upper classes. Nutritional quality of the middle and upper classes is expected to significantly diverge from the lower class over time. One way to look at middle class diet is that it reflects an aspirational pursuit of obtaining a higher social standings. Having less income requires families to choose generally unhealthy foods to meet basic needs. Low income families do not regularly meet the required daily servings of nutrient rich foods such as fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. And this issue spans far beyond the Pakistan. Globally, Low income is related to poor micronutrient intake. Culture has an enormous influence on what we eat. The world is teeming with unique cultures. Each culture comes with its own customs, social institutions, expectations, and of course, food. Each one of these cultures influences how we eat and what we eat from the day we are born. People in different cultures consume certain foods for many reasons. Other foods are discouraged, and some are even prohibited in some cultures. At times, the foods we grew up eating are not all that beneficial. Nutritionally speaking, some people find it difficult to shift from eating traditional foods to which they have been accustomed all their lives to new ones. For these reasons, it is important to make the adjustment incrementally, finding more nutritious substitutions while still enjoying some of those traditional foods. People connect to their cultural or ethnic group through similar food patterns. Immigrants often use food as a means of retaining their cultural identity. People from different cultural backgrounds eat different foods. Ingredients, methods of preparation, preservation techniques, and types of food eaten at different meals vary among cultures. The areas in which families live and where their ancestors originated influence food likes and dislikes. These food preferences result in patterns of food choices within a cultural or regional groups. Food items themselves have meaning attached to them. Nations or countries are frequently associated with certain foods. For example, many people associated Italy with the pizza and pasta, yet Italians eat many other foods and types of the pasta's dish vary throughout Italy. Methods of preparation and types of food vary by regions of a nation. Some families prefer to eat meat and potatoes, but meat and potatoes are not eaten on a regular basis, nor even preferred by many in the Pakistan and would not be labeled a national cuisine. Regional food habits do exist, but they also change over time. As people immigrate, food practices and preferences are imported and exported. Families move to their locations, bringing their food preferences with them. They may use their old recipes with the new ingredients or experiments with new recipes, incorporating ingredients to match their own tastes. What is considered edible or even a delicacies in some parts of the world might be considered inedible in other parts. Although food is often selected with some attention to physical need, the value or beliefs a society attaches to potential food items define what families within a cultural group will eat. For example, both plant and animal sources may contribute to meeting the nutritional requirement for proteins. Soybean, beef, and all other meats are all adequate protein sources. Some food beliefs and practices are due to religious belief. Muslims fast during Ramadan, believed to the month during which the Quran, the Islamic holy book, was given from Allah to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. During this month, Muslims fast during daylight hours, eating and drinking before dawn and after sunset. The dietary laws which describe the use and preparation of animal foods are followed for purposes of spiritual health. Many followers of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism are vegetarians because of doctrine of non-injury or non-violence. Abstinence from eating meat in these traditions stems from the desire to avoid harming other living creatures. Dietary practices vary widely even among those who practice the same faith. Such variation may be due to branches or denominations of a religious groups, national variations, and individuals of families' own degree of religious adherence. Culture also plays a role in food related etiquette. Some people eat with forks and spoons, more people use fingers or chopsticks. Utensil choices is much more complicated than choosing the chopsticks, fingers, or flatware. Among some groups who primarily eat food with their fingers, diners use only the right hand to eat. Some people use only three fingers of the right hand. Among other groups, use of both hands is acceptable. In some countries, licking the finger is polite. Licking the finger is considered impolite in other countries. Rules regarding the polite eating may increase in formal setting. At some formal dinners, a person might be expected to choose the right fork from among two or three choices to match the food being eaten at a certain point in the meal. The amount people eat and leave uneaten also varies from group to group. Social support can have a beneficial effect on food choices and healthful dietary changes. Social support from within the household and from co-worker is positively associated with improvements in fruit and vegetable consumption and with the preparative stage of improving eating habits. Social support may enhance health promotion through fostering a sense of group belonging and helping the people to be more competent and self efficacious. The family is widely recognized as being significant in food decisions, shaping of food choices taking place in the home, because family and friends can be a source of encouragement in making and sustaining the dietary changes. Adopting dietary strategies which are acceptable to them may benefit the individual, also having an effect on eating habits of others. Quantifying the social influences on food intake is difficult because the influences that people have on the eating behaviors of others are not limited to one type, and people are not necessarily aware of the social influences that are exerted on their eating behaviors. The venue in which food is eaten can affect food choices, particularly in terms of what foods are on offer. The availability of healthy food at home and away from home increase the consumption of such foods. Access to healthy food options is limited in many work areas and school environments. This is particularly true for those with irregular hours or with particular requirements, that is vegetarian. With the majority of adult women and men in employment, the influence of work on healthy behavior such as food choices is an very important area. Effects of snacking on health has been widely debated. Snacking can have effects on energy and nutrient intake, but not on body mass index. Individuals with normal weight or overweight may differ in their coping strategies when snack foods are freely available and also in their compensatory mechanism at subsequent meals. Snack composition may be an important aspect in the ability of individual to adjust intake to meet energy needs. Helping young adults to choose healthy snacks choices poses a challenge to many health professionals. In the home rather than forbidding unhealthy snacks, a more positive approach may be the introduction of healthy snack options over time. Healthy food choices outside the home also need to be made more readily available. Growing levels of stress in today's world can affect the food choices we make. As stress increases, many of us seek for ways to escape, relax, and decompress. Some of us do so through healthful activities such as exercises, nature walks, yoga, listening to the music, and so on, many other different activities. Otherwise, turn to food to obtain a similar effect. Highly palatable foods that are high in sugar, salt, and fat can produce a powerful pleasurable effect almost instantaneously. For this and many other reasons, it is important to address the underlying causes of stress. The influence of stress on food choices is complex, not least because of the various types of stress one can experience. The effect of stress on food intake depends on the individual, the stressor, and the circumstances. Some people eat more and some eat less than normal when experiencing stress. The proposed mechanism for stress-induced changes in eating and food choices are motivational differences, that is, a reduced concern about weight control, physiological appetite, and practical changes in eating opportunities, food availability, and meal preparation. Adverse dietary changes could result due to the prolonged or frequent stress, increasing the possibility of weight gain and consequently cardiovascular risk. Mood is closely related to the mental health. Our mood can affect the food choices we make. Food stimulates neurons, increasing the levels of serotonin, the body's primary pleasure system. When our mood is low and we have a difficult time finding natural ways to improve it, we may restore to finding artificial ways of doing so. One of these ways is through food that makes us feel good, comfortable food. It appears that influences of the food on mood is related in part to attitudes towards particular food. The ambivalent relationship with food, wanting to enjoy it but conscious of weight gain, is a struggle experienced by many. Dieters, people with high restraints, and some women report feeling guilty because of not eating what they think they should. Attempts to restrict intake of certain foods can increase the desire for these particular foods, leading to what are described as food cravings. Women more commonly reported food cravings than do men. Depressed mood appears to influence the severity of these cravings. Food cravings are also more common in the premenstrual phase, a time when total food intake increases and a parallel change in the basal metabolic rate occurs. Mood and stress can influence the food choices, behavior, and possible short and long term responses to the dietary intervention. Many individuals express a desire to lose weight or improve their body shape and engage in approaches to achieve their ideal body mass index. Problems can arise when dieting or exercise are taken to extremes. The etiology of eating disorder is usually a combination of factors, including biological, psychological, familial, and socio-cultural. The occurrence of eating disorder is associated with a distorted self-image, low self-esteem, non-specific anxiety, obsession, stress, and unhappiness. Treatment of an eating disorder requires weight stabilization and one-to-one psychotherapy. Prevention is more difficult to define, but suggestions include avoidance of child abuse, avoidance of magnifying diet and health issues, showing affection without over controlling, not setting impossible standards, impossible social standards, rewarding small attainments in the present, encouraging independence and sociability. Our beliefs affect food choices. There are a number of ethical concerns that lead us to eat certain foods while avoiding others. Some of us abstain from eating animal product, not just for health reasons, but also because we are concerned with the welfare of animal. Other makes their food selection that are dependent on sustainability and the impact on the environment. Others choose to eat food based on fair trade and labor practices. There are just few of the many ethical reasons that are contributing factors that influences the food choices. Attitudes and beliefs can and do change. Our attitude to dietary fats has changed in the last 50 years, with a corresponding decrease in the absolute amount of fat eaten and a change in the ratio of saturated to unsaturated fat. People believe that their diets are already healthy. It may be unreasonable to expect them to alter their diets or to consider nutritious or healthy eating as a healthy important factor when choosing their foods. These consumers have a higher probability of having a healthier diet than those who recognize their diet is in need of improvement. It is also unlikely that these groups will be motivated further by dietary recommendations. Future interventions may need to increase awareness among the general population that their own diet is not wholly adequate in terms of fruits and vegetable consumption, who believe their diets to be healthy. It has been suggested that if their beliefs about outcomes of dietary change can be altered, their attitudes may become more favorable and they may be more likely to alter their diets. A perceived need to undertake change is a fundamental requirement for initiating dietary changes. Education on how to increase fruits and vegetable consumption is an affordable way such that no further expense in money or effort, household income and cost of the food is very imperative factor that influencing the food choices. The potential for food wastage leads to a reluctance to try new foods for fear the family will reject them. Lack of knowledge and the loss of cooking skills can also inhibit buying and preparing the meals from basic ingredients. Public health authorities and government efforts, producers and retailers to promote the fruits and vegetable dishes as value for money could also make a positive contribution to dietary changes. For people who live alone or cooking for one seek out convenience food rather than cooking from basic ingredients. This need has been met with a shift in the foods and vegetables from loose to pre-packed, prepared and ready to cook products. These products are more expensive than loose products, but people are willing to pay the extra cost because of the convenience they bring. Developing a greater range of tasty, convenient foods with good nutritional profiles offer a route to improving the diet quality of these groups. Understanding how people make decisions about their health can help in planning the health promotion strategies. This is where the influence of social psychology and its associated theory based model play a role. These models help to explain human behavior and in particular to understand how people make decisions about their health. They have also been used to predict the likelihood that dietary behavior change will occur. Dietary change is not easy because it requires alterations in habits that have been built up over a lifetime. Various settings such as schools, workplaces, supermarkets, primary care and community-based studies have been used in order to identify what works for particular groups of people. Results from such trials are difficult to extrapolate to other settings or the general public. Such targeted interventions have been reasonably successful, illustrating that different approaches are required for different group of people or different aspects of diet. Interventions in supermarket setting are popular given this is where the majority of the people buy most of their foods. Screening, shop tours, and points of purchase interventions are ways in which information can be provided. Such interventions are successful at raising awareness and nutrition knowledge, but their effectiveness of any real and long-term behavior change. Schools are another obvious intervention setting because they can reach the students, their parents, and the school staff. Fruits and vegetable intake in children has been increased through the use of tuck shops, multimedia, and the internet. And when children get involved in growing, preparing, and cooking the food they eat, convert changes to dishes to lower fat, sodium, and energy content, improved the nutritional profile of school dinners without losing the students' participation in the school lunch programs. Workplace intervention can also reach large number of people and can target those at risk. Increasing availability and appeal of fruits and vegetables proved successful in work sites, canteens, and price reductions for healthier snacks in vending machines increased sales. The combinations of nutrition education with changes in the workplace are more likely to succeed if interactive activities are employed and if such activities are sustained for long period. Tackling several dietary factors simultaneously, such as reducing dietary fat and increasing fruits and vegetables, has proved effective in the primary care setting. Behavioral counseling, in conjunction with nutrition counseling, seems more effective in such settings, although the cost implications of training primary care professionals in behavioral counseling, education, and behavioral strategies have also been used in community settings, which have been shown to increase the fruits and vegetable intakes. It is a major challenge both to health professionals and to the public themselves to effect dietary changes. Different strategies are required to trigger a change in behavior in groups with the different priorities. Campaigns that incorporate tailored advice that include practical solutions as well as environmental changes are likely to succeed in facilitating dietary changes.